So we just kicked off this new series called The Christmas Stories, where we're taking a look at the Christmas story through the lens of some of the eyewitnesses, just to give ourselves a fresh perspective and a renewed sense of awe and wonder at this incredible story of God coming down for us. And this week we're looking at the story of Joseph, a guy whose life shows us that God is worth trusting with our future. I think that's something a lot of us struggle with. It's hard in the midst of our comfort and our lives and our plans to trust that God has our future under control and that God has a better plan for our future than we do. I know in my own life it's been a hard thing to trust. On Sunday we heard a little bit of Jeff's story about how he had a plan for his life, and he had this nice comfortable map laid out for what his entire life was going to look like, and then God came along and just messed it up and sent him in a different direction. And I know the feeling. I think all of us do. A few years ago I had a really comfortable, nice life going on, a really comfortable plan for what I was going to do, and I got offered this really nice transition plan in the same spot that I was to make more money and kind of take over some senior leadership roles, and everything worked out. And then God came along and said, nope, that's not what you're going to do. You're going to do something totally different. I want you to leave and quit and walk away from all this security and all this comfort and everything you've known, and I want you to go start a church. And in the year and a half since we left to start Revision, I've learned, just like Jeff said in his story, he learned just like all of us have so often learned, that God's plan is so much better, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. And I wish that I could sit here and tell all of you all these stories time after time after time where God messed up my plans and opened up a different door, and I just jumped through it with big faith and said, like, oh, okay, we'll go launch the church, we'll go do this, we'll go do that. And I have a few of those. And I have just a whole bucket full of stories where God messed up my plans and I freaked out and I did not walk through the door. Where instead of taking a bold step of faith, instead of trusting that maybe God had a bigger vision in mind and he could see something that I couldn't, I just shrunk back and I took the path of least resistance, and I sought to be comfortable, and I sought to do what was easy because the future looked really, really, really scary. I think for most of us, that's our story a lot of the time when our plans get messed up. We have these deep cultural values in the United States of America of like safety and security and comfort. And when any of those feels threatened in any way, when our safety feels threatened, when our security feels threatened, when our comfort feels threatened, we tend to retreat. We tend to protect those at all costs. And what happens when our plans get messed up? When we thought we had this really clear picture of what the future was going to look like, and then all of a sudden something happens and the future doesn't look like that anymore, is that we retreat to protect our safety and our security and our comfort, and we freak out. We freak out because the future that we thought we saw looks murky all of a sudden, and we freak out because God doesn't seem to value our safety and our security and our comfort the same way that we do. He just frequently allows things to happen that mess up our vision of the future, that lead us toward a different path. And the thing is, I know this from my own life, and I know this from so many of the people I know, and from talking to so many of you, when uncertainty hits, and when we can't see very far ahead, what we tend to do is just take a step back instead of taking a step forward in big faith, trusting that God's got it under control. And Joseph's life, as much as anyone's life in the Bible, teaches us that we can confidently step forward. We can confidently trust that God knows what he's doing, even if we don't. Because Joseph, over and over and over again, made the choice that God was worth trusting with his future. Like when his fiance broke his heart, he said, you know what? I don't need to be in control of this. I don't need to control my own reputation. I trust God with my future. I'm going to do the right thing. I'm not gonna disgrace her. And then when God came to him in a dream and said, you need to marry her, like this is my plan, Joseph said, okay, I have no idea exactly what this is gonna mean, but I'm gonna trust God with my future. And he did. And then when the baby was born, Joseph's looking at this kid that isn't his, and he doesn't fully understand. He knows it's from God, but doesn't fully understand what God's doing. And he said, okay, I'm going to raise this kid. I'm going to love this kid. I'm going to give everything I have to this kid. And in Joseph's entire lifetime, like, he died without knowing the full scope of what God was doing. He died without ever getting that clear picture of the future that all of us crave. But he just chose again and again and again to say, God, you are worth trusting with my future. I'm going to step out in faith and do it. And that is a hard thing to do. That's a hard thing to do. It's a big leap of faith. It was for Joseph, and it certainly is for most of us. Because I think what happens for us is that when the future gets cloudy, and when our plans fall apart, and when we have the opportunity to either shrink back or step out in big faith, we tend to get caught up in the myopia of the moment. We tend to look around and believe that all we can see is all that there is to see. We forget that God maybe is seeing a bigger picture, and we trust our eyes instead of our faith. We trust our eyes instead of our God. And we just believe that only what we can see matters. I said this on Sunday, I'll say it again. We get caught up in realizing how small we are while forgetting how big our God is. And the consequences are pretty severe. I got a beautiful picture of this just the other day. I was reading about the Cleveland Browns, who are the most dysfunctional, terrible, awful organization maybe in the history of sports. And then this new president, a guy named Joe Banner, who put up all these quotes in their new training facility that are misattributed quotes. They're just not even the right quotes attributed to the right people, which is hilarious and a totally Browns thing to do. But he has this one that he quotes all the time. He attributes it to Red Auerbach, the great Celtics coach, which isn't anything he ever said. It's just a Joe Banner thing. He says, "I learn with my eyes, not my ears." And he said it a few different ways, like, I learn with what I see and not with what I hear. And he's a guy who trusts his eyes, and his eyes have got him to an 0-11 franchise that is the absolute embarrassment of pro sports. Don't be the Browns. Don't trust just your eyes. Like, it's so easy to do, though. It's so easy when everything isn't just the way we thought it would be, to just trust our eyes and say, all I can see is all there is to see, and forget that there's this big God looking at a big picture. And so often when we do that, when we believe that our limited vision is all that there is, we end up in a space where if we could do it over again, we would have trusted God. Or if we could do it over again, we'd give anything to go back and try again. But it happens time and time again in humanity. I mean, there's hilarious examples. There's a guy named Leo DeForest who invented the cathode ray tube, who once, like, after he invented it, said, television is a theoretical possibility, but we should not pursue it because it's never ever gonna happen. There's a guy named Thomas Watson who once was the head of IBM, and he had all these engineers telling him, hey, we should build computers. And he sat there in a board meeting once and said, I believe that there is a worldwide market for about 5 computers. We are not going in that direction. And record executive after record executive after record executive turned down the Beatles. One of them wrote them a letter that said, you boys will not go far in this business. Guitar bands are going out of style. And what I can guarantee you is that all those people, if they could go back, would kill to have been able to see the bigger picture, would kill to have been able to escape the myopia of their moment. But you know who wouldn't go back? I'm convinced of this 100%. Joseph, he lived a difficult life. It wasn't always easy. He had this vision, this plan that he was going to marry a girl and raise a family and do a carpentry business. He was going to live this safe, comfortable, secure, normal life, and God had more adventurous plans in mind. And Joseph lived his whole life just fighting for God's plan, trusting God with his future, even though he didn't know all that it would mean for him. But I guarantee you, knowing what he knows now, there's no way that Joseph would go back, because God was worth trusting with his future. And the question for you and me today is this: like, what plans are we holding on to, believing that our plans have got to be better than God's plans, that his couldn't possibly be better, that we don't want to let go of? Or what plans has God already messed up? What visions of our future have already become murky because God's allowed something to happen, or something's occurred in our life that messed up the steps that we thought we were going to take? And what spaces do we occupy right now that are tempting us to shrink back rather than step forward and say, God, you are worth trusting with my future? Corrie ten Boom, this incredible Dutch woman who helped shield countless Jews from the Nazis during World War II, once said this: never be afraid to trust an unknown future to a known God. I wonder for us, what would life look like if that was our motto?